Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts as they share with you the insider's guide to property investing.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch, your insider's guide to property investing. I'm Bryce, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel. And he's dancing over there, and he's Ben Kingsley, the chair of the Property Investment Professionals of Australia.
Warming up.
2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year. What are you warming up for? You're going skiing, aren't you?
Yes, but I'm keen.
Pumped.
That's Property Couch Day.
I know. Mate, we are on the couch. If anyone could just see how relaxed we are sitting on this couch, mate, they'd be envious.
True, but
Truth be known, we're standing.
We are standing around a microphone, but that's all good. So, yeah, I'm having a little break.
Yeah.
Group of us go away every 5 years for a nice little ski trip. So, just a short one.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to
check
out the powder of Japan, as they say.
Taking the dearly beloved, I'm sure.
Next question. Yes, no. Just the gentlemen go on this little trip. And, I've just put pen to paper on a new article for the Money magazine.
Yeah, it's a cover story.
Yep, so we can't talk about that, but I'm excited about it. So that'll be out. So as soon as we get permission to talk about it, we'll give the scoop.
Only to the Property Couch listeners.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Only to them.
So, mate, so when you're skiing, break a leg? Is that...
I'll see how my back's going to go. I could be sitting in a hot spring for the whole week if my back doesn't hold up.
Yeah, we could actually revisit those early ones, Iris, where we had to go over to Ben's house with him lying on the floor. Certainly wasn't the property couch there. It was the property recovery room.
Yeah, so everyone's telling me, what am I doing? You're an idiot. Why go, blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
We were just thinking that, weren't we?
You only live once.
We were just thinking that. All right, we've got some stuff. What's topical, mate? You've put out an RBA video on Tuesday.
Yep.
Always quality content.
Yep.
Mate,
so
you want to embellish?
Yeah, they met. Look, I mean, there was nothing. There's a couple of things in there that was of interest to me. The first one is obviously rates on hold. Okay, so we know what happened there, and that was pretty much unanimously predicted that that's what we were going to see. But here's the tip, okay, and the podcast listeners are going to get the opportunity to hear this first. I'm calling it. I'm putting my neck on the line.
Right.
There will be an out of cycle interest rate rise. Okay, so when I did the video on Tuesday, I'm like, there's a possibility of it. Now I'm absolutely convinced. It's almost like the media have been prepped by the banks to sort of let everyone know that something's coming. And so...
You reckon they're on the payroll, the media?
Oh, gee, you never know. They might get a cheaper interest rate.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to... Let me try and unpack this. Okay, so the banks have to be safe. They have to be secure, financially stable. They're the pillars of our economy. And so they have to raise more capital. Okay, they have to have greater capital reserves. And so there's talk is that they need around another 30 billion. Okay, so the big four need another 30 billion to be able to be what APRA would be consider, elitely strong in terms of robust from a global correction. So how do you do that? How do you raise that capital? Well, we saw last year, they went to the shareholders and to the institution investors and said, hey, we've got some options, we've got some new shares coming out, come and buy those shares. And they raised quite a lot of money, okay? But that marketplace mightn't have an appetite for that again in terms of what's happening in the equity market. So their other option is to, and they have, usually most of the big guys have share reinvestment plans. So a reinvestment plan means they allocate more shares, but the capital stays in the bank where they need it. And the final one is to pass it on to the customer.
No,
so there will be, they'll use the excuse, that cost of funds are getting more expensive offshore and the bond market's changing, so we're really sorry. But the reality is, and here I'm sticking my neck out again, the reality is they need to give performance in terms of profitability to their shareholders to keep driving that share price. So they are going to come out and hit us with 10 to 20%. So that's 10 to 20 basis points, not 10 to 20%.
I was going to say, oof.
10 to 20 basis points. And I suspect...
You've been really good with your predictions in the past. That made me a bit nervous.
I suspect it's going to happen, putting my finger in the air before June. Yep, so it's going to be first half of the year. But what was interesting in the RBA statement was a little bit down the bottom that says that they have capacity to reduce rates further. So I'm not saying that there's collusion here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're getting together, but they're just maybe, if that happens, I suspect we just may see a rate cut that might also surprise to try and bring that balance. Because here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. The deal is that if these rates happen out of cycle, it changes sentiment and consumer confidence. Retail spending's really good, and the RBA doesn't want to play with that. You know, they want that to be as it is, because this is how we're going to grow the economy. So the reality is going to be that if this rate cut happens, people might just get a little bit more conservative and not spend. So the RBA will probably turn around and say, oh, we're here to rescue you. We'll just drop that down 25 basis points. And then the banks will only pass on about 10 to 15 of it. So there's another little way in which they get a little bit more margin. Because on one hand, they're having that happen, but APRA, Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, are really making the banks work harder for their money. So for them to continue to keep growing profits, and the APRA coming in and giving them more constraints around servicing calculators and how they lend, which is how they make their money. It's a sort of, it's a little bit of a gentleman's agreement. I don't think they've gone for a walk in the park. I don't think, but I just see this as being a way in which they manoeuvre their way through 2016.
Come on, mate. I just had visions of them sitting in Centennial Park with one guy on the chair facing one way, the other guy...
that's gold.
Like they do on Homeland and they do on 24.
And they have a little secret code.
Don't look at me. Pick up the napkin as I leave.
Is that the wind over west? Over yonder? That is the wind on the sea of the eagle rise. And then off they go into it.
So that's good then. So they'll look after the existing customers by giving them some relief, but still discourage new sort of lending, so we don't get that property boom.
Yeah, look, obviously asset appreciation and the asset bubble is what they're also concerned about. Yeah. But I think they've got that in check. I think they're comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And in reality, what we're seeing is it's happening. Those out of cycle rate rises that we saw last year only happened in residential. They didn't happen in business. So again, I'm not saying that there's a collusion, but it just surprised me, because obviously they want business lending, because business lending usually equates to jobs. So, we're going to see that. But we did see NAB just this week raise their short-term interest rates on business lending. So there might be a little bit of movement there, but if the RBA gives them a little bit more cheaper funds to keep lending out to business, because that's where we're going to reduce that spare capacity in the employment market and hopefully sail through a better year. But it's still choppy waters for 2016.
There you have it, folks. You heard it here from Ben. He's told us out of cycle rate movements,
10 to 20 basis points. And here's my other prediction. It will definitely not be Westpac, because they were the ones who led the charge last time. So they will, again, in the park, they would have drawn straws, and Westpac would have got the longest one, guaranteed, because they won't do it again.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be either ANZ, CBA or NAB. And I don't know whether NAB will be the first, but I reckon ANZ or CBA are going to be the whipping boys this time around.
Very good. All right.
Or it could be a St George a little bit on the side, which is really Westpac. But, the consumers don't realise that. But, yeah, that's where it's going to live.
Mate, I like it. If you're going to put your neck out, I'm going to as well.
Oh, do it.
Fremantle will win the premiership this year. So you heard it first in February. So rewind back in October, and you'll mark my words, it'll happen right here. The thing that you talked about before too is, obviously business confidence is what it's all about. Interestingly, here at Empower Wealth, we've got some people, we're looking out for some quality people. So if anyone who's in our community knows of any experienced investment savvy mortgage brokers, they should reach out to us. Talk to Ibis, info@thepropertycouch.com.au, just let us know. And we're also after an apprentice in our planning division, Ben.
Yeah, our property wealth planning division is growing. We're a lot of people that want to come and get a plan done and be looked after. We're interested in someone who is passionate about property, loves numbers.
Helping people.
Accountants, frustrated mortgage brokers who want a new challenge in their life, financial planners, or even just someone who's an engineer who wants to move into the property investment industry and loves it. So we'll always hire for attitude and train for skill.
We always will hire for attitude, train for skill. So if there any of our listeners that resonates with anyone let Ivis know, info@thepropertycouch.com.au. media noise, surely that's going to follow all that interest rate talk as well. What you've got some views on what you think the media, they don't like neutral stories, do they?
No, well, you see it out there, don't you? I mean, it's either the headlines that sell a boom or bust. So property tanking, property booming, auction rates through the roof, auction rates through the floor. What about just telling us there's it could be a steady market for 2016. It doesn't have to be all boom and bust. But it is an interesting time for us as we enter back in, as the gears and cogs of property start moving in our major cities. Explain to the listeners.
Yeah,
why.
talking to the agents where we're dealing with, their activity is strong, their inquiry is strong, their opens are being well attended. So it's a tale of two tiers, isn't it? The further out you go, there's where the sentiment's most likely to make people more cautious. But where we're buying in investment grade locations, there's no shortage of interest, because we've always got to remember, no matter what, 70% of the market's buying a house to live in, and they don't make decisions based on. They do. They make decisions based on household cash flow, but it's largely around emotional reasons, and they're not sitting there going, "Is this an investment grade location? Is this what's the vacancy?" They're just deciding whether or not it suits their needs. Yeah. And so most people aren't unpacking it to the level of detail that we are, but in the areas that we're buying, people are still moving, and the properties are still in strong demand. So it means asset selection has been our mantra along how important it is. But in the areas that we're looking at, they're not reading the newspaper. They can't be reading the newspapers because they're still turning up to their opens.
And this time of the year is our first gauge on those opens, isn't it? So that's when we start to see the interest. And sure, there'll be the few neighbours having a sticky beak, but when you got 20, 30 couples through an open, you absolutely know that there's a few buyers in that pack. Whereas if you're in an area where you're seeing a few opens and the buyer interest is slow, or no one's walking through the opens, that's a good indication for us that the market has in that area slowed. And that comes back to that. Some journalists almost want to make the market. They're the type of people who they've been on their own little agenda or soapbox. Yep, as I said, Sydney's going to correct and try and push this sort of agenda. But the reality is, as we know, Sydney's multiple markets within markets, and Melbourne's multiple markets within markets. So we don't get caught up in that noise, and we hope our listeners don't get caught up in that noise. We do like the theory of timing the market, and as data becomes more and more available, we think that the science of timing property purchases will get better and better. But we're on record years ago of saying the time in the market is the ultimate reward, but as we get better and better in terms of being borderless investors and looking at different markets and looking at the activity in those markets, it's going to be a better chance to get in at the entry level of the upswing cycle, as opposed to getting in the top of the cycle.
Mate, it's about the time of the year for hotspots, isn't it? Hotspots.
Oh, here we go. Well, let's get them all out there. Let's get those hotspots out there. 100 experts with
top 100
4,000 suburbs that they think are the next to go, with their agendas of what they're trying to buy or flog or sell in those locations. So our belief on hotspots.
Here's our tip for the listeners: the stories that consistently sell the women's magazines front page: Royal Family, latest diet. It's always the Royal Family or the latest.
I thought you were going to say Leighton and Becky Hewitt then, because I think they're on, they're off. Well,
it depends which one you pick up, isn't it? Isn't one for them? One with the agreement says nice things.
Breakups. That's the other. Yeah. But you're right. The diet story.
Hey mate, they might catch you one day when we're walking down the street and you went to sneeze and they just got they just got the shot of you looking angry at me, and it'll be a headline: the property couch, they've split up. Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. But my point is this: that hot spotting is the equivalent of dieting. So whenever you read a property investment magazine and they talk about hot spotting, that's the equivalent of a diet. And the one thing doesn't change with a diet: you've got to exercise, you've got to eat well. No matter what label they put on it, no matter what fancy thing they do, that's the fundamentals. And for us, owner-occupier appeal, investment grade, scarcity. That's what's underneath hot spotting.
Correct. And when in some markets where there's big booms of building going on, we're actually scared of some of that right now, because that's oversupply country. So whereas the economic impact in that area looks really great on paper, but the reality is it's like, okay, well that accommodation stock has got to be absorbed. and it's not going to be absorbed overnight. So from that point of view, we'll just sit on the fence and see what happens. But as we say, as it starts to get absorbed, we might cherry pick some of the smaller blocks around the corner that those new medium and high density stuff are going to deliver, the little Thai restaurants and the little Indian store and hopefully a little wine bar to go with it. And that's the sort of stuff that will attract us to an area.
Very true, very true. Hey, we've been getting heaps of questions, Ben, so I reckon we should quickly touch on a few today because we want to get to the coal face of investing where people have got these real questions. So we've got a question from Ben. I don't know if it's you just sending us questions, mate.
Well, I thought there wasn't enough questions coming, which is not true. We're getting inundated with questions.
It's on Facebook, so no, it's not you because you don't like social media.
Oh no, that's not true.
That's actually not true.
Yeah, well, no, yeah, I don't post. I don't have a very good shop front, I suppose, and I see Facebook as a shop front. Because think about it. I mean, all it is people putting the best of their best up there. You don't see them waking up with a hangover and say, "Here's me, have a look at this selfie." No, we get all the best. We get the best meals they're eating. We're getting the best location. So you won't see me posting. It's rare that you might see me posting a picture of me in Japan. It just won't happen.
Mate, it's funny. We'll fix that up.
Wait a minute, I'm just being told I am going to be.
We'll get you to text this one. Last night, my wife shows me this this video on Facebook, and it's about Instagram husbands, and it's like a parody of these husbands who have to trawl around with their wife and just take photos, and he gets interviewed, and he's got this look on his face, and he goes, hilarious. "We used to go to restaurants, and we used to actually eat the food. Now we just go there and take photos." And put it up on Instagram. So
anyway,
you're not going to catch Ben doing that.
So my shop front's probably not one of the better ones.
What I'd be actually really excited about is if I send Ben a text message and he returns it. That'd be
within a week. It's all right, isn't it?
I'd take it within a week. I'd take within a week. It's donuts. Text message to Ben, donuts.
I'm busy.
You're busy.
I'm busy studying property.
You're a busy man. Ben says, read a book. Oh, no, I can't read. Read a book that outlined the kiddie loan system. I was wondering what Ben and Bryce's opinion on using this system was and whether it truly works or not. The book indicated to let the amount accrue over a period of time, but I'm not sure what bank and what type of loan allows you to do this. Thank you.
So the kiddie loan system. So the book, Stephen Zamical, and I think also someone else had an interest in that book. It might have been a buyer's agent in Melbourne as well. So I actually know Steve. Many years ago, I used to work with Steve. Great guy. And the kiddie loan system is a name for interest capitalisation. Mm-hmm. So it's effectively saying that if you've got a lot of equity in, say, your family home, and you want to go and buy a $400,000 property and you've got $200,000 in equity, you might use $100,000 of that $200,000 to assist with the purchase of that new investment property and then get another loan against that new investment property, but have a $100,000 reserve, okay? And what happens there is the rent that's coming off the property, the investment property, goes into the principal home loan, and you have the mortgage being serviced by the buffer loan, by the line of credit loan for the investment property. So it's right on the edge of what might be considered tax.
Hart's case.
Tax avoidance, maybe. It's not necessarily a scheme, and in some cases, because I haven't read Steve's book, but in some cases it might be that there's a small amount going on to the loan, but the interest is capitalising. So think about it like a business. If we're in business and we've got an overdraft, and let's say we have we've just sold a lot of stock, or we've got a lot of stock out on assignment, and we've got to pay all of our manufacturers who are helping us out, but we've got this cash flow shortfall, okay? And during that cash flow shortfall, we just happen to have an overdraft account. So we pay the $50,000, but the person that we sold all this stuff to hasn't paid us yet, and we've got another 30 days before they have to pay us again. Well, effectively what's happened is there might be interest on that overdraft that I have to pay. Now that's tax deductible. Okay, and then hopefully when we get the money from the consumer and we pay off that money, that's how it works. So you're sort of, they're advocating this concept of living off equity and using this kiddie loan, and it can take two shapes. One, it could be a buffer account, and it could be this interest capitalisation account. So what's actually happening there? It's just creeping up over time. Okay, and that interest is tax deductible so long as you speak to your accountant and explain to them what you're doing. Because I think there'd be a problem if you just automatically let that capitalise up and had no intention of paying that down. So that's something where you can get a private ruling from the tax man. You can say, well, this is what I'm looking to do. Is this okay? And they can either say yes or not. But I don't think it's carte blanche. I don't think you can automatically say, well, I got to do it, so everyone in Australia will be able to do it. And I think if everyone in Australia tried to do it, they'd change the law because the tax man want their tax receipts right to the big boys in town as well, not just the small guys. But that's basically how it works.
I think the point is you don't need to get too cute, do you?
Yeah, it's a bit aggressive.
If you're walking the line, there's no point. There's no need is probably the point there because if you structure lending well, trap surplus cash flow and put it to good use, that's what you need. So,
which comes to a broader point because I know Steve is not that type of person, and certainly the book that he was trying to write there was certainly not as a tax avoidance program. But you will come across in our industry spruikers on all levels, not just on the people who are spruiking the best properties, but people who are spruiking the best structures or aggressive structuring, and I think that's the point. That I think
I haven't read this book, so I've got no comment on the author, the system, and I'm not casting dispersions at all.
No,
just based on your description there.
Yeah. So ultimately, what you've got to be careful of is that these people are going to advocate certain structures, complex structures, maybe hybrid trusts, maybe family trust structures, and you've just got to ask yourself. How aggressive is this? And I know it's had a private ruling, but a private ruling for someone else is not a private ruling for you, and they may interpret it different for you. So I would always go back to my tax specialist and my property tax specialist to validate their claims to make sure that I'm not getting myself into something that is aggressive, and that when I am audited, I'm found to be in breach of my tax obligations. So, our broader view, we don't invest in property for tax benefits. Okay, they are a secondary or tertiary thing that assist us, just like in any business. If we borrow money, we get a tax deductibility on that money. That's the most important thing for me, to make sure that people understand that.
Very good question there. Hopefully that helped. I think wasn't Glenn?
There we go.
One of our sign-offs.
Well, I think that he's asked for.
I think he's requested.
Yeah, he's requested a sign-off. So
well, we maybe have to.
We'll have to look at
next
that
week.
Okay, finding an investment. I'm an Aussie expat living in Dubai and looking to invest back home. I have been told to look at property investment that provides a loss for tax purposes, so I can benefit when I return. Well, we just talked about this, didn't we? Any information on how I can invest or what would benefit me from overseas would be interesting to hear about. Is this tax benefit the most important issue for me, or should I just be looking for growth that will then outweigh any taxes I have to pay? I hope that makes sense. I've enjoyed your podcast thus far and have now purchased your book. Do you take clients from overseas? Well, that's, yeah, of course we do. We take clients from all over Australia and overseas, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the question.
I got a client in New York, and we had to get the timing right. And when I was chatting with him, because we're over Skype, he's chatting there, having a beer, and he's in an apartment in New York with the windows open. It was almost like It's almost like I was listening to a movie, with the police cars and all that. So yeah, we've got clients all over the world.
Yep, we do, and so we love taking expat clients. But again, that's a story for another day.
I think he's answered his question as he's gone along. Because when I first heard you say that, I was going to say no, don't invest that provides a loss for tax purposes. But then his second sentence goes, or should I just be focusing on growth that will outweigh any taxes I have to pay? That's my answer. Yep. Look for the best outcome for you, but acknowledging the fact that you're not getting any tax breaks immediately. And again, no advice, subject to talking to your accountant, but it's a bit like money in the bank because you can carry forward any losses that you have on an Australian tax return, again, subject to you checking it out with your accountant. That is a bit like money in the bank, because if you've got 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 worth of carry forward losses and you plan to come back into Australia in 10 years' time, your first 20,000 plus the tax-free threshold, whether it's 6 or 10 at the time, is tax-free. So it's but if the point is, if that's something you're going to get in the future, focus on the growth outcomes in the short term.
Yeah, look, and so I'll put my tax hat on, and again, I'm no tax specialist, but we can say this. Australia has tax arrangements, whether they be called tax treaties or arrangements, with certain countries. And in other countries, we don't have those arrangements. But the concept is that if you've paid tax in some of these countries where we have a tax arrangement, is that they don't want to double tax you. Okay, so that's their goal. In Dubai, we also know that is a tax-free environment for some. So, I've got a client who used to live in Milan. So Australian engineer in the mining sector, Milan, interesting. In mining, in big oil, and he was based out of Milan. Not sure there are too many oil wells. Too many oil wells in Milan, but we first started working with him when he was working out of Africa. But the point was, that he was so effective in his strategy and so good, and obviously had really strong income coming through, that his properties turned positively geared. He was negatively geared to start with, and so those tax losses were locked here for when he was to return. So he's now since returned to Australia, and he's got all of those tax losses, those tax. I'm thinking of the
credits.
The tax credits, all caught up, and now he's in a position where he can take advantage of those. So it's country by country and circumstance by circumstance. But the most important message here refers to, why do we invest in property?
Primarily, all things being equal, for a growth outcome.
Yeah. So we're not doing it for tax. So Glenn, you have answered your right question, and that is, mate, we want to get the best return possible based on your cash flow circumstances. If those cash flows are strong, we go for gold and chase growth. If the cash flows are going to be middle of the road, we might get a balanced asset where we get a bit of growth and a bit of yield. And if those cash flows are tight, we will be chasing a yielding type property to make that sort of happen.
Growth is what you get out of the market, rent is what keeps you in the market, and tax is the cream on the top of the cake.
Can you say that again? Can you just say that one more time? I love your gold.
Mate,
I love the way you summarise things while I waffle on like I'm some idiot who doesn't know what he's talking about.
It's just indicative of my education level. I've just got to bring it down to as small and as simple as I possibly can. So I understand it because, mate, you're the smart one in this group.
Well, that's rubbish.
So growth is what you get out of the market. Rent is what keeps you in the market, and tax is just the cream on the top of the cake. So there you go, folks. We have covered that for you, Glenn, and we might sneak your sign off in the next couple of weeks, I reckon.
That sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan. What else have you been seeing in the market of late, mate?
Mate, I've been seeing
You've
lots.
been active. We've got a lot of clients that we're looking for.
Yeah, well, the thing is that we're fully embracing the borderless investor philosophy. So for our clients, we're trying to get them into the market where the next 36 months is going to see some nice growth. So we don't want to get lazy, because time in the market is definitely a mantra that we believe in.
Yep, absolutely.
But as we get more sophisticated in what we know, we want to overlay that with timing the market.
Yep.
So we want to be counter-cyclical. We want to get into markets before the media has arrived, and we have been doing that. So we've been on planes.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, listeners, logically, the last thing we want to be doing is competing against 10 or 15 passionate, emotional buyers in a stupidly hot marketplace. We're not going to be paying fair market value. We're going to be paying emotional value. And so if any buyer's agent's convincing you, or you're convincing yourself that that's the right way to do it, well, just be prepared for the correction or the softening of the market, and sitting on an asset for 3 or 4 years, and the opportunity cost, which is a loss if you do that. So, as our business has evolved, we're getting more sophisticated with our research, and so we're more confident in the marketplaces that we're going into. We're doing that field research, and that's what you need to do. And if you don't have the time or the energy to do it, then outsource it to the professionals who can help you in that location.
Very good words of wisdom there, mate. All right, so
is that a wrap?
That's a wrap. We've raced through it. So just a quick reminder, if anyone's passionate about property and they're searching at the moment, or they know someone who's searching, we've got an experienced investment savvy mortgage broker that we'd like to talk to, and we've also got a planning apprentice, someone who wants to learn from the 2014-2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year on how to build portfolios on behalf of other people. So let us know if that's you.
And can I put a target out there for the listeners? Okay, if you love the podcast,
no.
go on to the Apple review site and give us a review.
Oh, that'd be great.
And because I would love to get to 100 reviews by the middle of the year. Now I think we're at 54 or something like that. Reviews.
Yeah.
So
he said views, didn't he? Yeah.
Reviews. Oh, I think we're very close.
We're close. Yeah.
Close. So if we can get, I mean, if that's all we ask for. It's a free podcast, but just a little bit of feedback would be great for us. Would love to get that up to 100. Would be nice.
Very good point. We always ask a favour at this point. If you like our podcast, if you could just tell one person this week,
of course,
that would be great to help us spread the message. And we're also going to put up the RBA video up on the Property Couch website as another free resource for you folks to go and check that out.
And that was before I made my prediction. So there is the prediction around, do I see an out of the rate right side? I do now.
Yep.
So I see it clearly now. I've looked at the data in the last few days and I see it clearly.
Yeah.
Well, the media reports anyway.
And if you want to get that automatically sent to you each and every month, because Ben does one every month, just let Ivis know via email and she'll show you how to do that. So no problems there. All right.
Okay. Here we are. What do I do now?
Well, you got to sign off. Do you have to sign off? Have you signed off in what's Novak Djokovic's? Is he Serbian?
I think it's something like that.
6 titles he's won at Australian Open. He's up to
jet.
11.
He is a jet.
Poor Andy Murray.
The Joker is a jet.
Oh, mate, I was going for Federer, and I went and saw Milan Raonic, the Canadian.
Yeah.
Mate, he's about 6'7", mate.
Moves like a gazelle.
He had Murray in
all sorts of trouble.
And then he got injured. So anyway, it's a shout out to the tennis listeners. We haven't talked about tennis before. So he's Serbian. Have you done Serbian?
No, but I'll look it up. Right. Because I'm not ready for Serbian.
mean you're prepared?
I'm not ready. Well, I'm not really ready for anything, but I did pick up the piece of paper whilst you were talking.
All right.
And I found...
Where are we going?
Tibetan.
Okay.
Now I've got to... There's about 6 on here, so I've got to find the right one.
This needs to be in a Dalai Lama peaceful state if you're going to go Tibetan, aren't you?
Oh, okay.
There we go.
And this one is "See you later," as Gazy would say. See you later. And it's Gemma Yang Yong. Gemma Ya Yong.
Gemma Ya Yong. Ibis? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Gemma Yang Yong.
She's giving you
Gemma Yang Yong.
Oh,
no,
that's a bit Mandarin and Cantonese.
Cantonese.
Okay. All right, folks, there we go. Gemma Jai Yong. See you later.
Gemma Jai Yong.
Till next week, Gemma Jai Yong. See you guys.